Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir.
And this is the Ramen Chum.
Welcome back to Kero Blaster. When we last left off, we had been abducted by these little black things and sent to the train station, which is spelled wrong. It's like T-R-A-Y-N-E. I think that's sort of playing on the fact that we went to the Ox Hotel and White Laboratories, and all these things have had, like, people's names. So it's train station. But this is, in fact, a train station. It doesn't look like it yet, but we're gonna get there. So the first thing we notice is these giant little, I don't know what these are. They're like dust balls that fall out of these pipes chasing us. Another new enemy we're seeing here is these wall crawlers. They will hide in the wall, and they'll try to come out as soon as you go past them. But if you hit them, they will go back in the wall, and then try another opportunity. They can be a little annoying to get rid of. Here's another interesting new enemy. These little sea anemones who shoot out these fish. As soon as they fall into the water, or sometimes they stay in the water, the fish will start moving straight forward and trying to hit you. We also notice here some eels. I don't know if these eels even count as enemies, really. They're very simple. They're more like obstacles. But we're going to be seeing a lot of them pretty soon. Another thing in this level that I guess I wouldn't exactly call an enemy, but it's a hazard, is you might have noticed those little drops of poison falling from the ceiling.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you have to avoid those. So yeah, these fish can be surprisingly hard to avoid because they move down very quickly when they're shot out.
Oh, those are fish. I thought they were, like, just some kind of projectile.
They're like skeletonized fish. You can see they have a fish head and then the rest is like a bunch of fish bones. Kind of creepy, actually, now that I come to think about it. So basically, where we were transported is sort of underneath the train station, in this little subterranean tunnel. And even though it's called a train station, it's more like a subway, because even the subway itself is enclosed. We will actually, in fact, later be getting on a train, which is always nice. I love games with trains, you know. Paper Mario, Final Fantasy VIII.
So do you actually,
I'm actually having trouble thinking
on
of
the train?
I'm reserving that.
Okay.
You can make up your own mind. Anyway, we get something very nice here, a 1-up. It's a very rare drop from enemies. Maybe like 1% of the time you'll kill an enemy, you get one. But there's another 1-up here, which you have to be a little careful to get. You have to not fall in this pit. And that's very important, because coming up is a boss that's pretty difficult. The only reason that it is not going to look difficult for me is because I've played it before, and I know how to beat it. Trust me, the first time I fought this guy killed me a lot. So to actually wake up this boss, you have to break his antenna.
Oh, snap.
Oh, snap. And his two little guns activate. The guns shoot out eels. So the first thing you have to do is get rid of his guns. I came really close to getting squished there. Actually, the way this guy killed me most often early on was that he would squish me. When you get rid of his guns, he turns into like a little flan man. In fact, he summons things that are literally flans.
Or no.
He's flan. He is, in fact, actual flan. The things he's summoning to, like, hit me, they're flan. You know, that's all there is to it.
That's pretty much what he is.
I do not know how this guy's not killed me yet. He's like a robo
he's an air freshener. That's what he is.
He does look a little like an air freshener. But the things he's shooting at me, like, you can see the little plates. It's custard. Creme caramel. So many names for it. One dessert, lots of names. I used to love creme caramel. It's a great dessert. But creme brulee is better. It's just hard to get these days, and you know, who has time or a blowtorch to make their own? Anyway, that was just a little victory dance there. I was surprised. I wasn't expecting to beat this guy in one. He was really nice. There's a certain element of randomness in bosses in this game, because that guy has squished me against the wall or the floor a lot of times, and I left him several openings. Like, I was not being careful, but I still didn't get squashed, and I don't know why. It's very strange.
Luck?
Well, that's the only thing it can be attributed to.
I wonder how many dishes there are in the world that can be, like, use, if not require, a blowtorch for cooking.
Bananas Foster? I don't know. There's, crepes Suzette are set on fire. Crepes Suzette.
True.
It's mostly desserts. For some reason, people like the idea of like industrializing desserts.
I think it's something about, like, the shell you can get from...
It's caramelization. Yeah, you can
Yeah.
caramelize sugar. That's why people would use a blowtorch. No other reason to do that. Obviously, if you just baked it, it might not caramelize. Anyway, I'm doing some upgrading here. I think I got a heart. And then I considered upgrading the pea shooter, but I really don't have enough money. But now that I think about it, I'm probably just going to grind here. This is actually a really great place to grind because I have the ninja thing, which is just amazing in closed spaces. And there's tons of enemies in here, so you can rack up a couple hundred coins in one pass through this area easy. Mostly through these crabs, but of course you also have the little dust balls.
They can tank over there.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I'm definitely grinding here. So, desserts. Do you like any of those things that are made with a blowtorch? Would you ever consider getting a blowtorch?
I've never really had them.
Yeah. I mean, there are those things. You know the little grill lighters? Things where you like, pull the trigger and it makes a flame. I wonder if you could use one of those instead. Because my family has a few of those.
I'm guessing it wouldn't work very well.
Since those are designed to start a fire instead of, just being one. Oh, no, sorry. I wasn't getting the pea shooter upgrade. I was just getting another heart. So it's not too much grinding. Really, the laser isn't very helpful at this point. It would have been useful for some earlier bosses, but I got the ninja thing instead. When you've upgraded some of these things all the way, there's less of an incentive to upgrade anything else. For instance, certainly when you've upgraded the pea shooter and the fan guns all the way they can go, upgrading the bubble is pretty stupid at that point. And the flame only marginally less so. There's some benefits to it, especially since some enemies can only be defeated with it. So anyway, now we are actually outside the train station proper. We've gotten through that cavern. Some tricky jumps here, but nothing too terrible. We will be seeing what too terrible is pretty soon here.
Oh boy.
I don't mean in this video. I mean, sorry, in overtime. So here there are two new types of enemies. We have those trash can guys, who you have to get up really close to in order to draw them out. And they shoot just little pellets at you. These spider guys, more interesting. They go back and forth from the ceiling to the floor when you hit them. They also will turn purple and shoot out fire at you if you get too close. I had actually never seen them do that before this playthrough because I'd always just annihilated them before getting close enough. But I guess I was getting a bit careless here.
You're kind of running it.
Yeah, I'm being reckless, definitely.
Oh well. I mean, I don't care.
Yeah.
Why did that drop before you?
I don't know, I think it's kind of like joking with you. Like, you could run right into it, and I'm pretty sure it can still damage you after it's fallen. Here's another new enemy we see right here. He just jumped out of that little cubbyhole. Those enemies will appear when you come near them, and then they will scurry across the floor very quickly in either direction. They're a little hard to get rid of, but if you have one of the major upgraded weapons, you can just concentrate fire on them, and that'll get rid of them pretty quick. These elevators can be a little confusing sometimes. You may have noticed there were a bunch of clocks in the underground area. Kind of weird. They didn't work. These clocks, on the other hand, are just going like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Here we get a better look at those scurrying enemies. They have this like really big grin on their face when they first appear, but after that you just see their eyes. We're noticing more and more of these so-called negativus legatia enemies all over the place now that we're getting in here. It seems like the farther we go, the more the infestation grows.
Ooh. So, I was gonna hit you for a
here's
second.
the train. Okay, time to let the cat out of the bag. You were right. We do indeed have a fight on a train.
Yeah, I kind of figured.
I mean, who would make a level on a train station and not have something like this? It would be a crime. There's that phone call again. Because there's other phone calls in this game, I could have sworn that there was like a phone somewhere I was going to need to go to, but no, it's just the train. There is a difference, you can tell if you're paying attention. The phone call is higher pitched. I mean, clearly, in real life, they're two different kinds of things. I just never realized in real life that's something they did. I should have realized. I mean, you know, in the United States, they'll have little bells to warn you not to cross a street, for instance. That kind of thing. They have to have that because of people with disabilities. Anyway, this is the boss.
Very much like Pokemon music. I think
Yeah,
I've heard
right.
this theme before.
This is the boss theme. It plays in every boss. So yes, you've definitely heard it before. Well, sorry, not every boss. Most bosses. Obviously, the final boss is its own theme. And mini bosses have a different theme. Other than that. So, it's a pile of these little creatures carrying this clock, which is very odd, and then there's a bird on top of it. The bird is definitely the mastermind of the whole operation. He is the Al Capone of this very strange syndicate that we are fighting here. Yeah, it's a little weird. So the ninja is definitely the best weapon here because you're trying to hit that little mass of, you know, the creatures. And, you know, they can just be very difficult to get with any ordinary weapon. But with a nice spread like you get from this, it's a lot easier. So now we see this creature's true form. It was never a pile of stuff. It was actually a running clock. This is very Salvador Dali right here, especially with the clocks fighting it. In fact, I never realized this until just now, but this is almost definitely inspired by Salvador Dali. The idea of being attacked by floating clocks that are wobbling all over the place. It's surreal,
Yeah.
I'll say that. Even if it's not Dali, it's definitely odd. So this section I would almost say is easier than the first section, because when the guy summons the cloud of birds, you can just fire in that direction and you'll pretty much be safe. And he's a bigger target in this phase too, which is a little odd.
Yeah.
This final phase can be a little tricky if you don't have good reflexes, but if you can just, like, know to jump at the right time, this is a very regular pattern, and I guess I'd say it's very dodgeable. So technically this could be the easiest of all three phases. It's a little bit of a shame. This guy was really rough on me the first time I played this game, but subsequently I found him to be one of the easier bosses.
Interesting.
You might have noticed I didn't have too much trouble with him. Oh, and then there are two penguins pushing a handcart, and I have no idea what's going on here.
Okay.
It's like some kind of fever dream. I mean, this whole game is, but this more so than anything. Okay.
It's even more weird.
So, they mentioned before they were going to have a plan to get rid of the boss's pet, because it's one of these things, and it's probably the reason why she's been, like, swelling up into that weird cat creature.
Yeah.
So, they're going to get rid of it.
How so?
I don't know, throw it out the window. Let's pick it up, you know, maybe one of them has a pistol, put a bullet through its brain. Except that's not going to work, because look at this frickin' thing. I mean, how are you going to move this outside? They don't even remember what it looked like. But yeah, I think the audience knows it definitely did not look like that before. And this is kind of acting like a bomb, isn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
You
And,
might want to,
oh,
like,
crap.
back away.
Oh, crap. The boss is here. They're so gonna get fired. I mean, that's the least of their worries, but they'll probably be fired. And she grins. Yeah, the boss has definitely been corrupted by this point. I don't think we can count on the boss to help us out. And then these things take over literally the entire city. I don't know if you've ever seen the end of Paranoia Agent, but it's kind of similar to that.
Oh, God.
So, we get off the train, and now we are just outside our office. You may recognize this from Pink Heaven. This is where the little office lady was wandering around before. But now it's full of bad guys, so it's very different. This is an interesting level. It's the last level in the game, and we're going to see pretty soon. The idea of it is sort of to have all of the different types of enemies and challenges that we faced over the game. So we're going to be seeing a huge variety of enemies in this level, more than any other. We start out, funnily enough, with the enemies we fought in the last level, and then it's going to sort of go backwards from there until we get to enemies we fought in the first level. Here is a new type of enemy, these huge, like, gross tumor creatures. I don't know if you remember, but that was actually the final boss from Pink Hour. Looked exactly the same and had the same moves. But that was just one, and it was the final boss of that demo. So, you know, now it's just a regular enemy. And it's got a lot of health. More than any other enemy in the game, I believe. It's got 100 health. The first boss, I believe, also had around 100 health. Just for comparison's sake. So yeah, here we see the little clouds from level 2.
Which still only have like 6 health.
That's right, but there's now a lot more of them, so... These, I would say, are more hazards than enemies at this point. Very easy to get rid of, but also easy to run into if you're not paying attention. Here we have those little snapdragon flowers, also from level 2.
Good reason not to go to them, certainly.
Yeah, you gotta be a little careful here. Although it is more fun when you just blast through. Having, like, the better weapons means that this can kind of turn into a... I don't know, a frenzy. You gotta be a little careful. So yeah, just a little mishmash. I like the fact that this is all taking place outside. It's like this is a playground, but it's full of all the enemies you fought. It has this weird mix of feeling like a simple level, like a peaceful level, but also having all these super tough enemies.
Yeah.
It's an interesting contrast, you know? It's a prosaic environment, but it's the most difficult level in the game. The final level in overtime mode also manages to accomplish this, but in a slightly different way. It'll be a while before we see that. Oh, it's a totally different level. I might spoil this about overtime mode. Most of the levels in overtime mode, while they are a totally different layout, have the same kind of structure as the original levels. Like, they're called the same thing, same types of enemies and stuff like that. But the final level is totally different, because it's a different story, so different things are happening. But we'll get to that when we come to it. It's very interesting. If anything, overtime mode is much more interesting in this game than the regular playthrough. Not to hype it up too much. I mean, I know that's what I'm doing. But... Anyway, these annoying enemies that we saw at the end of the last level, these ones which shoot out a projectile at you as soon as you hit them, they're very resilient because the first time you hit them, they like have invincibility frames for quite a while. And then that also happens when you subsequently hit them. There's like a window when you have the opportunity to do a lot of damage. But you have to make sure you're hitting them during that window. And because they have a very small hitbox, it's not easy to do.
Which is probably why that spread helps, I imagine.
Oh, definitely. It's also the reason why they show up in the last 2 levels of the game. Even though they have very little health, only 10, I think. It's interesting. I like the fact that this game does some clever things with enemy design, so that they don't make the enemies harder just by ramping up the amount of health and damage. Although, just as I say that, now we have an ascended boss. Or, sorry, a descended boss here. This was the boss of the first level, but now it's just a regular enemy. There's 2 of them in this.
I remember that. Did they make it tougher as well?
I don't believe so. I think it's the same.
Interesting.
But then again, I haven't measured. I'm using the wrong weapon against it. I should be using the straight-ahead pea shooter. It's not a huge difference, since, I don't know if you've noticed, but the pea shooter is 2 steps behind the fan here. So since this does so much more damage per shot, it almost makes no difference at this point. I should have tried to keep pace with the fan, but I didn't. And my first playthrough was a lot more even, because oddly enough, because I died more, which means I had more money. Because you keep your money when you die, the more you die, the more you replay levels, and thus the more money you have from getting rid of normal enemies. So, that's the funny thing. Doing well at this game is actually a handicap. It's actually the way I think it should be. I prefer that to games which make it harder on you when you fail.
Fair enough.
It's clever. I wouldn't say it's unique, but it's different from a lot of games. Anyway, I'm going to buy some hearts here. Top me back up. And I think I'm also going to finally get the laser. Yeah, definitely. It's cheaper than I thought. I could have actually gotten it back when I got that other heart. I was confusing it with the final upgrade, which takes 800. That is called the Laser Uzi, and it is everything the name implies. The regular laser just fires straight ahead and bursts. The Laser Uzi alternates between 2 levels, so it has a wider spread, and also does more damage. I also upgrade the burner to level 2, which we're going to use in a second here. It just means it covers a wider range.
Does it have a higher... Does it do more damage per second?
The laser?
Yeah, after that.
Absolutely. The laser does tons of damage per second. It's a huge difference. It's really good against any enemy that you can count on to stay in one place. So it's a good complement to the ninja, which is good for anyone that you know they're going to move around. Finding it a little difficult to get these guys, though, because, as I mentioned, they have a substantial amount of invincibility right after you hit them for the first time. But you may have noticed, so I get 1 damage into them, and then 10 all at once. That's because of the invincibility frames. So here we're seeing a few of the enemies from level 3, like the electric urchins. They found a clever way to get them back in. You just have a tank in the office. Although I don't know what office has like a giant lobster tank in it. Of all the perks I know of from office work, this is one of the less well-known. Here we have the little refrigerators from... Oh, were you going to say, to be fair, I don't know anything about office work?
No, I was not gonna... That would be me. No,
I don't know.
Say,
it would have been appropriate.
I was gonna say, to be fair, this is a really weird office.
Yeah, it is. And it's only gotten weirder. That is a nasty trick. So right after you get the jacket, there's something that falls on you that you can't see. So it's likely to get rid of the jacket just as soon as you've gotten it. It just takes away what it gave you. But I don't fall for it. I'd like to say it's because I have great reflexes, but actually it's just because I played this game before. And speaking of my great reflexes, I lose the jacket. So I got to keep it for like 30 extra seconds. I hope that Kero enjoyed that. I call him Kero. I don't know what his real name is, or even if he has a name. I've mentioned before, there are credits in this that do show you what characters' names are. Our main character is the only person who does not appear in those credits.
That's weird.
So we do not know the main character's name, if indeed he even has one. I only know it's a he because they say that guy at some point. And who knows, you know, maybe it's just one of the guys, you know. Gender neutral. Preferred pronouns. For frogs, I believe it's rib and riz.
Let's not go there.
Yeah, okay, whatever. There are people on the internet who identify as frogs, so it's very close to home.
Again.
Amphibicid.
Not going
I believe
there.
they're called. I'm just being silly. Anyway, here's some characters from White Laboratories. And some boxes with the W on them. I do not know what company that is. It could be White Laboratories. But it could also stand for work, which is something that we'll see in overtime.
Interesting. So those guys seem to get, they seem to be getting, like, instant iframes.
That is correct.
The
Like
very
you hit
first
them,
time you shoot
you
them.
hit them once, and they get invincibility frames. So this is a little annoying. There's a guy right in the bottom of here who, if you fall down, will hit you a lot. But I get rid of him using the only weapon that is suited to situations like this, the bubble. Which I believe I have not used now for like the last hour of in-game time. It's a very situational weapon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's sad. I mean, I like the bubble, but it's just not very useful. The worst part about it is, you would think a bubble weapon would be great underwater, right? But the bubbles float underwater, which means they go straight up. And there's no enemies that are right above you. So, ironically, it's actually the fan that's really good underwater because it doesn't lose any power. And the bubbles are at their worst underwater. Yeah, it's
Because
weird.
they have really short range.
Well, and because they go straight up when you shoot them.
Oh, wow.
I didn't really
Which
show that
makes
off in the
sense,
playthrough. Maybe
but
I
also
should've.
means that they're completely...
It's kind of clever, actually. I like the fact that they put in that little realistic element. Like, you know, a bubble weapon would float in the water. It would be pretty crappy, actually, in general. But, you know, who wants a weapon to be...
realistic that it's garbage.
Who wants a weapon to be realistically garbage? I mean, really. Maybe in Borderlands, where there's like 3,000 weapons, you could have a few of them be crappy as a joke. You know.
Well, even in Borderlands, though, I mean, honestly, the variety of the types of weapons is much narrower than
So
the game's advertising.
now we are going to fight the boss. And by that I mean, of course, it's a video game boss, but also that it is, in fact, our boss. It works out.
Haha.
Mm-hmm.
It would be funny if that was like a deliberate pun.
Maybe it is. Who knows?
Wouldn't the laser be a bit better here?
Yes. Tell that to my past self. Actually, the ninja isn't bad. So I'm not being entirely incompetent here. I am being kind of incompetent, though, because I get hit by these guys way too much. They're not that hard to dodge. I also get hit by these rocks too much.
So, this thing's tanky as shit.
I know. it's kind of like Dracula, actually. Like from the Castlevania games, I mean. Anyway, so now it's the slightly less fat boss that we saw from the second level, I think. I mean, the cutscene at the second level. She rides around on a little Segway that is made out of these creatures, which is very odd. When you destroy it, she hops into the air and fires out a few more of them. These little board guys are really funny. I don't know what they're supposed to be there for. But they block you off, so it's harder for you to dodge this stuff. And to dodge the flies she sends out when she enters this phase 2. Anyway, I'm really kind of sucking here. I don't know what I was thinking,
well.
but it's pretty bad.
Hindsight.
Yep.
Now you know
she
how I
trapped
feel.
me. Destroyed by a cat on a Segway. It's like the worst internet video ever. I mean, like meme video, you know. Planked by a cat. It would be fun to come up with like the memeiest concept ever. So you may have noticed there, I do briefly switch to the laser, but what I realize is that since I want to get rid of the flies and these guys in addition to destroying her, that it does help to have a bit of a spread. See, I would have to jump up a lot in order to get this with the laser. I'm now playing slightly better. I only got hit by one of those. But really, the key to this boss, I would say, is just to keep the heat on. You have to make sure you're constantly attacking. And because the boss keeps moving toward you, you know, it's very important not to dawdle, because this boss can trap you in the corner. It's also worth noting that the number of times this boss will fire those things depends on how far to the right it is. If you can get it when it's far enough to the left, it'll only shoot that stuff once. I don't manage to do that because, you know, because I'm...
Well, I mean, it makes sense because what it's firing off at you are, like, the things you're shooting.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And
Now you're
here's the second phase. So now I'm using the laser because these guys, you know, she had me trapped in a corner and I need to get rid of them super quick. But you also have to remember to get rid of these flies because they don't just disappear. They actually stick around quite a bit. They will bounce off the floor, so yeah, you pretty much have to make sure you are destroying them. Don't just assume that you'll get rid of them eventually. So the game takes pity on me. It gives me a little heart here. Manage to get it. So I pretty much have a chance at this point, at least. This boss only has 2 phases, which is nice. It'd be pretty tough if there were 3. Yeah, just destroy that Segway. It's very ugly. No fashion sense at all. Now, one of the things about these guys, the little like vertical guys, is that you can't ignore them completely and fire on her during that phase, and that might actually be better. Because if you did that, they wouldn't block you, and you could just jump over them.
Yeah.
Anyway,
how effective is the fire here? Oh well.
It's not. I'm just doing proper like the thing protocol and burning it to get rid of the infection.
And like all cats, she recovers from an undignified situation by acting as if nothing has happened.
Exactly. Very cat-like. Also, like cats, she's immune to fire. You know how it goes.
I'm not going to test that.
Well, you don't even have a cat. You couldn't.
I thought of getting one.
Well, this game might make you reconsider. Because this cat has caused us a lot of trouble. You know.
Ah, well,
yeah, you have messed up. Let's just
that's not cats.
let's just
That's
get this
just
thing out of the
bosses.
office, okay? And we'll. What are you yelling at me for? Oh crap! See, if you hadn't been yelling at me, you would have had time to run away. Stupid boss.
From the giant game cartridge?
It's like a giant thing of Jello, actually, that has absorbed all our friends. Just like Undertale. And it shoots binary code at us, that is platforms, and error messages that hurt. This is a weird boss. If you thought the level 6 boss was weird.
Honestly, enemies in 8-bit games or 16-bit games that look like graphical glitches is getting a little overdone.
Yeah. This is actually more 8-bit than 16-bit. You'll notice the sprites are very chunky.
Mm-hmm.
They are a little bigger than sprites could be in the 8-bit era. But other than that. So as you can see, this guy has a lot of different attacks. He'll send the little guys on the floor out at you. He sends out the error messages. And also, every time you hit him past a certain level of damage, he'll jump into the air. You'll see a bunch of targets show up. Every one of those targets tells you where a laser is going to come down. You have to dodge those, and then when he hits the ground again, he sends out a shockwave. So basically, you've got to dodge vertical and then horizontal. You got to be really on your toes in this boss. So, it took me this death to figure out that really I should be using the laser here. This guy's a huge target, so I don't need a spread at all. And you can't really... Sorry, what?
Sorry, I just noticed. The damage threshold is 250. Oh, I guess that was
No, I don't think so. Yeah, it was a coincidence.
That it was 256. I thought
that is an interesting coincidence. I didn't even notice
I would have loved it if that was deliberate.
Yeah. Anyway, once you get him past half health, he gets substantially more difficult. He starts doing 7 of these instead of 3. And these error messages come out faster, and there are more of them at a time. But if you're paying attention, if you go into like a Zen mode and ignore all of the graphical detail, you can sort of isolate which parts of this are going to hurt you and figure out a way to go past them. I'm not demonstrating that very well right now, but, you know, I encourage you to play this game better than I do. That's all I can say. Now, luckily, I have 9 lives. Kind of funny, considering I'm the frog,
cool
not the cat.
If you had, like, a boss like this where the numbers were in, like, hexadecimal or something like that.
You mean the numbers that you attack him with? Or do you mean the numbers that make the platform?
Screwed with the UI in that way?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, they kind of do some things like that, so it's not like it would be out of line.
I would have suggested doing it in binary, but that could get that could lead to some...
Yeah, that could lead to a great deal of confusion.
Impractically long digit counts.
I don't know what the hell I was doing here. I end up on totally the wrong side of this guy. Luckily, he takes pity on me. He could have squashed me. I don't know if this boss is capable of squashing you, but it seems like it should.
To be fair, he's not exactly a hard target.
No, he's not. Isn't hard target like a set phrase?
I don't...
Oh, okay.
No.
There's like hard targets and soft targets in military jargon, right? Hard targets are the ones that you're actually going for. Soft targets are things you get on the way, opportunistically. I think. This is just my own understanding. So yeah, even though I screw up completely, I won this.
Targets that weren't very well defended.
Could be. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a soldier. So, having defeated the giant cartridge chip monster, the Negativus Legatia turn white and float up into the sky, which is a little strange. So, I am gonna do a little bit of like analysis on this game, partly based on what it says, but partly based on my own interpretation. Negativus Legatia is like really crappy dog Latin for negative legacy. The fact that it's associated with the boss is tied into like the work culture of this company. So the boss, when she was younger, worked for a different company. This is something you learn in overtime mode. And like she had to do a lot of overtime work. So you go into that sort of in the overtime mode. In this game, the emphasis is on whether people are going to get fired, and the idea is there's not enough work to keep everyone working. So that's the struggle in this, and it's what these little blob things represent is worrying about work. And so the more she worries, the more like these things show up, and they've corrupted her, and then that's why she ends up being the final boss. So yeah, then the office lady's like, this means no more overtime, right? So we should be able to leave on time. Hooray. That's the most important thing. Not saving the city from this blob menace. It's the fact that we won't have to work overtime anymore. Kampai. In any case, in overtime mode, which we're going to see pretty soon, it's going to be the opposite problem. Too much work to do. And we'll see why. Oh my god, the boss. I hope she doesn't fire us all for getting rid of her pet.
The idea of a hard mode actually changing the story Has some interesting connotations.
I wish more games did that, to be honest. I thought it was very clever. So yeah, this is the boss's way of apologizing to us for everything that has happened. Some nice flowers and a visit. So yeah, maybe it wasn't a pet. Maybe this thing was just controlling her. She found it one day and it was like a yerk or something. I don't know. Who can say? This game, very vague plot, but there's some themes you can identify, I think. And the idea of this being tied in with the office culture of Japan, I think, is definitely clear. People talk all the time about having to work overtime, are we going to get fired because of what we're doing? What your job actually means. And then there's the tie-in games of Pink Hour and Pink Heaven, which are about the life of an office lady.
That makes sense.
Anyway, I hope everyone has enjoyed this playthrough of Kero Blaster. It's a very fun game, even if you only get through the main game, which is understandable because hard mode is very difficult. This game I still think is worth $10. It's a great game. Very interestingly designed, challenging, but not overwhelming, and it encourages you to keep going. There's some mechanics that are, very supportive. However, you definitely get the most out of this game by playing overtime. So if you do get this game, I encourage you, everybody, including Greg, to play overtime. I am not the greatest gamer in the world, and I managed to get through it eventually. I'm pretty sure anybody can do it with enough perseverance.
I mean, to be fair, that's pretty much my argument for Dark Souls.
Well, consider this game my Dark Souls. And the difference between this and this tone of Dark Souls is like the difference between my personality and yours. You're serious, big into history, and I'm insane. That's the difference.
Okay, that's one way to look at it.
Anyway, so we will be coming back very soon, hopefully, with Overtime Mode. I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. It's been a real blast, no pun intended, to go through it.
Har.
And we will see you then. Bye, everybody.
See you later, everybody.